Dr. Mara Velen had survived first contact, 3 interstellar wars, and a near-fatal exposure to Kepler 442b's toxic atmosphere. Yet nothing in her 2 decades of xenobiology prepared her for the innocent question posed by the small, furry creature sitting cross-legged before her in the observation dome. "Dr. Velen," Cub Arvek chirped, his 6 crystalline eyes blinking in sequential curiosity, "where do babies come from?" The human xenobiologist froze mid-keystroke, her fingers hovering over the holographic display, documenting apex reproductive cycles. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been studying this very subject for months, but discussing it with an actual apex child, particularly one from the most powerful family in the Galactic Council, was another matter entirely. The apex were apex predators of their world, evolved from pack hunters who dominated their planet's food chain for millennia. Standing 8 feet tall at adulthood, with retractable crystalline claws and bioluminescent fur that shifted colors with their emotions, they were formidable. They were also, Mara had learned, incredibly protective of their young and maintained strict cultural taboos around childhood innocence. Cub Arvek couldn't have been more than 5 cycles old, roughly equivalent to a human 7-year-old. His fur rippled with curious yellows and oranges, and his tail swished with anticipation. Behind him, through the transparent walls of the research station, the purple seas of Apex Prime churned peacefully. "That's quite a question, Arvek," Mara said carefully, glancing toward the door where she knew his parents would return any moment from their diplomatic meetings. "Mother says babies are gifts from the eternal current," Arvek continued, his translator collar rendering his chittering speech into perfect galactic standard. "Father says they emerge from the sacred pools when the 3 moons align. But you're a scientist. You study how things really work." Mara felt the weight of the moment. The Apex had invited humanity into the Galactic Council only 3 years prior, impressed by human tenacity during the Andromedan incursion. Cultural exchange was still delicate. One wrong move could set back decades of diplomacy. But she was also a scientist, and if there was one thing humans valued above political convenience, it was truth. "Arvek," she began, pulling up a chair to sit at his eye level, "different species have different ways of creating new life. What I tell you is scientific fact, the reality of biological reproduction. Would you like to hear the truth?" The cub's fur blazed bright orange with excitement. "Yes, please," Mara took a deep breath. "On your world, Apex adults release genetic material into the sacred pools during the Tri-Moon Festival. The pools are rich with minerals and biocatalysts that combine this material, growing cubs in specialized crystalline matrices until they're ready to emerge. Your people have evolved this method over millions of years. It's actually quite elegant." Arvek's eyes widened, but he nodded, processing. "Humans, however, reproduce differently. We're what we call mammalian viviparous species." She pulled up a holographic diagram, keeping it clinical but clear. A human female has a specialized organ called a uterus. When genetic material from a male and female combine through a process called fertilization, a baby begins developing inside the mother's body. For approximately 9 months, the baby grows, protected and nourished by the mother's own body systems. Then, through a process called birth, the baby emerges. "The baby grows inside?" Arvek's fur rippled with confused purples. "Yes, the mother's body becomes a living incubator. Her heart pumps blood for 2. Her body feeds the developing child directly through an organ called the placenta. It's demanding, sometimes painful, but it creates an incredibly strong biological bond." "Does it hurt the mother?" The cub's voice was small, concerned. "Sometimes," Mara admitted. "Pregnancy can be uncomfortable and birth is often painful. But human females are remarkably resilient. Our species evolved this method because—" "What are you telling my cub?" The door burst open with such force that it cracked its frame. Matriarch Selvik stood in the doorway, her fur blazing aggressive reds and blacks, her claws fully extended. Behind her, Patriarch Torvon's bioluminescence pulsed with barely contained fury. "You dare!" Selvik's voice was a growl that made the walls vibrate. "Speak of such biological horrors to an innocent child." Arvek scrambled behind Mara's chair, his fur flashing fearful whites and grays. "Matriarch Selvik." Mara stood slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. "Your son asked me a direct question about reproduction. I gave him a scientific, age-appropriate answer." "Age-appropriate?" Torvon roared. "You told him that human females are parasitized by their own offspring, that they suffer pain and bodily invasion. What kind of barbaric—" "It's not parasitism," Mara interrupted, her voice firm but calm. "It's evolution, it's biology, and it's the reality of how half of my species contributes to creating new life. You've traumatized our son with images of biological violation." Selvik moved closer, towering over the human. "Have I?" Mara gestured to Arvek, who peeked out from behind the chair. "Arvek, are you traumatized?" The cub's fur swirled with thoughtful blues and greens. "No, I was just thinking. Human mothers must be very brave and very strong to carry their babies inside them, protecting them with their own bodies even when it's hard." His eyes turned to his mother. "I came from a pool. But human babies come from love so strong that mothers share their own bodies. That's actually beautiful." The room fell silent. Selvik's aggressive coloring began to fade, replaced by confused magentas and uncertain teals. Torvon's bioluminescence dimmed to a soft glow. "You think it's beautiful?" Selvik's voice was barely a whisper. "Different species, different methods," Mara said softly. "Your people evolved communal reproduction in sacred spaces. It reflects your pack mentality and collective culture. Humans evolved individual gestation. It reflects our adaptability and personal bonds. Neither is superior, neither is horrifying. They're just different expressions of life's will to continue." Patriarch Torvon sat down heavily, his massive frame suddenly less intimidating. "We thought the way your species reproduces seems so violent, so invasive. We couldn't understand how humans could speak of motherhood with such reverence when it seemed like such suffering." "Suffering and love aren't mutually exclusive," Mara explained. "Human mothers choose to endure discomfort, risk, and pain because the result, a new life, is worth it to them. It's perhaps the most selfless act in our biology. We don't see it as parasitism or violation. We see it as sacrifice, connection, and yes, as Arvek said, as brave." Cub Arvek emerged fully from behind the chair, his fur settling into gentle golds. "Can I ask one more question?" His parents and Mara all nodded. "Does it work? Are human babies as healthy as apex cubs from the sacred pools?" Mara smiled. "We've spread across dozens of worlds, survived in environments that would kill most species, and adapted to countless challenges. I'd say our method works pretty well." Matriarch Selvik's fur finally settled into warm ambers, the apex color of respect and understanding. She looked at her mate, then back to Mara. "Dr. Valen, we apologize. We reacted from our cultural framework without considering that different doesn't mean wrong. And we've learned something today," Torvon added, his voice gentle now, "about humans, and about the many forms that love and creation can take across the stars." As the Apex family prepared to leave, Cub Arvek turned back one final time. "Dr. Velen, I think human mothers must be the strongest beings in the galaxy." Mara felt unexpected emotion well up in her chest. "We like to think so, Arvek. We like to think so." After they left, Mara returned to her research. The data on apex reproduction continued scrolling across her display, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought of her own mother, of all human mothers throughout history, and of the strange, beautiful ways that life in all its countless forms found to perpetuate itself across the cosmos. Perhaps that was the real lesson of the stars. Not that humanity was exceptional, but that every species had its own exceptional story. And understanding those stories, really understanding them, was the first step toward true unity among the stars. Her comlink chimed. A message from Matriarch Selvek. Council session tomorrow. Humanity's petition for joint reproductive biology curriculum approved. Our children deserve truth, not comfortable myths. Thank you, Dr. Valen. Mara smiled. Sometimes truth was uncomfortable. Sometimes it was shocking, but it was always worth sharing. That, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.